Hi everyone, it's top gaming setup, an Xbox and a PS5. But which is superior, in your opinion? Because Xbox has seen a lot of modifications in the past few months, it makes me wonder if an Xbox is still necessary in 2025. What is the difference between it and the PlayStation 5? We will thus discuss that topic today. We're discussing games, accessories, cost, and even whether Game Pass is superior to PlayStation Plus as a whole in 2025. However, before we get started, tell me which of these you have and what games you're playing right now. Alright, so let's start with the games since, in my opinion, they are the most important consideration when choosing a system. In any case, it was once. In 2023, I stated that 99% of the games we play are compatible with both consoles. Games such as Battlefield, Fortnite, Cyberpunk, Call of Duty, and more. It doesn't matter which console you have, if you only want to play those kinds of games because you can purchase and play them on both and receive the same experience. The exclusive games are the one significant distinction between the two that, in my opinion, sells consoles. Games that can only be launched on one or the other system, Halo, Forza, and Gears of War on Xbox, and Spider-Man, God of War, and The Last of Us on PlayStation. Therefore, you must play The Last of Us on your PlayStation if you wish to play a game like that. You should acquire an Xbox if you want to play a game like Halo. Indeed, I am aware that a PC can play almost anything, albeit occasionally with a delay. But we're only talking about the PS5 and the Xbox today. As you are undoubtedly aware, a lot has happened in the past year or two with regard to Xbox exclusives and Xbox games. This explains why so many of these titles are either already accessible on the PS5 or are on their way to the PlayStation. Consider Forza Horizon 5. This is one of the primary Xbox-only games that, in my opinion, would persuade players to choose an Xbox over a PlayStation. It's undoubtedly one of my favorite racing arcade games, and it's still one of the primary games I play on my Xbox. It eliminates the requirement to possess an Xbox for that one game by enabling Forza to be purchased on the PS5. However, I will discuss Game Pass in a few minutes. This also applies to the other exclusive games that have been transferred to the PlayStation in recent months. Oblivion, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, and Sea of Thieves have all been remastered for us. Only this week did we learn that one of the greatest Xbox series, Gears of War Reloaded, would also be available on the PS5. Furthermore, there isn't even a time delay there. On the same day, the remaster will be accessible on both consoles. This is significant because it allows PlayStation users to play nearly everything on a single device. It's evident now that Microsoft is moving away from hardware and toward getting their games in front of as many people as they can. And that's not a bad thing. However, it does lead us back to the initial query I posed. In 2025, will an Xbox still be necessary? For example, if you want to play a PlayStation-only game on your Xbox today, your only option is to purchase a PS5. Therefore, I would suggest purchasing a PS5 for the following games: God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon, and The Last of Us. I'm actually a big fan of PlayStation-only games, which you have to play on a PlayStation unless you also have a PC. On the other hand, it appears that you no longer need to own both consoles in order to play all of the Xbox games if you have a PS5. To be honest, who would have imagined that in 2025 we would be playing Forza on a PS5 or receiving a Gears of War remaster on this platform? It almost seems obvious to play everything in one location, especially since the majority of these games are PS5 Pro enhanced and take advantage of DualSense features. Nevertheless, aside from the games themselves, there is still a significant distinction between Xbox and PlayStation, and that is between Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. Now, if all you want to do is purchase your games, digital or physical, Game Pass and PlayStation Plus won't matter to you, because you will still purchase the game and pay between $40 and $100, depending on the bundle or game you choose. When purchasing games directly, neither platform nor console proves to be more cost-effective. However, Game Pass and PS Plus are good options if you would prefer to rent or borrow your games rather than purchase them. Although they provide a very similar experience, I personally have both Game Pass Ultimate and PlayStation Plus Premium primarily so that I can play the games that I don't intend to purchase. They are also quite different as well. First, let's talk about PS Plus. Spider-Man, God of War, Days Gone, and countless other games are among the hundreds of games that are currently available in this library. Actually, there are hundreds of other games on this site, in addition to the majority of the PlayStation exclusives we discussed earlier. You can now play those old PS1 and PS2 games as well, depending on the plan you choose, and they continue to add roughly 10 to 15 new games each month. Not to mention the PS Plus games we receive each month, which include 3 brand new titles that are added to the library and are available for download and retention. Even though those PlayStation-only games are available here, we don't usually get the brand new exclusives on day one. Therefore, regardless of your plan, you will need to purchase Spider-Man 2 if you wish to play it. I've mentioned this before, but Game Pass is something else entirely. In addition to the hundreds of games in the library, the majority of which are comparable to PS Plus, they also provide us with something that PlayStation does not: first-day releases. We discussed games like Oblivion Remastered and Indiana Jones, which are available for free on Game Pass. Forza is available on Game Pass, and Gears of War Reloaded will also be available on Game Pass immediately upon launch. So although we can play the same Xbox games on both PlayStation and Xbox, if you want to rely on a monthly subscription for your games, then Game Pass will give you just that. Additionally, it will perform admirably in offering nearly all of the games you desire. However, this will force you to pay for a subscription indefinitely because those games will no longer be playable after you stop making payments. On the other hand, you can continue playing the games without a subscription if you purchase them outright. However, if you only want to pay a monthly fee for games, you will have essentially covered your entire annual cost after downloading 2 or 3 games annually. Returning to the original query, is an Xbox required in order to utilize Game Pass for your collection of games? No, an Xbox is still not required to use Game Pass. Now, although I don't think we will ever see a Game Pass app on a PS5, that just wouldn't make sense for either of them. Game Pass is still available for download and use almost everywhere else. You may download the Game Pass app to your phone or even a newer smart TV. Yes, you may play or stream those games directly to the TV by installing Game Pass on that device. Despite marketing that basically refers to everything as an Xbox, you don't actually need one to play Xbox games. This is only a step away from being available on the PS5 as an Xbox. Having a PS5 plus a Game Pass app on your TV, however, means you can essentially cover everything. Then there are, of course, the controllers. There is still a noticeable difference between these two consoles even after 4 years of use. We have been accustomed to the Xbox controller for many years. It's not much different to the Xbox One controller, has a decent battery life, asymmetrical thumbsticks, and loads of custom color choices to pick from. In fact, I think the Design Lab is a game changer for getting the ultimate bespoke controller. It's very unfortunate that PlayStation doesn't provide this. The DualSense controller comes next, though. This design is quite different from what we've had in the past, and it includes some amazing features like adaptable triggers and haptic feedback. I feel that once you've used one of these in certain games like Astrobot or Horizon, you realize how they make the games feel that little bit more immersive. Of course, we also have those limited edition controllers to purchase, but the majority of them sell out quickly, so you'll have to try to buy them used. If you don't like the symmetrical layout of the PS5 controller, you can use third-party controllers for both consoles. For instance, Hyperkin announced an Xbox controller that resembles a PS5 controller, and Razer and Nacon have a PS5 controller that looks somewhat like a PS5 controller. So if you wanted that asymmetrical layout on the PS5, this is how you could do it. Finally, we have the two Pro controllers for both consoles. So we've got the DualSense Edge and the Elite Series 2 controller. These give us those extra buttons or paddles around the back and instant triggers across the top. They cost a little bit more, but the build quality and the features that we're getting definitely make it worth it. Okay, then VR is a big one. So if you're a gamer that wants to try or use VR, then naturally the PS5 is the only choice here, unless you go for something like a MetaQuest headset. But again, we are only talking about the Xbox and the PS5 today. So on the PS5, we get the PSVR 2 headset. This includes 2 controllers and a headset that you can use with VR-compatible games. The library has grown over the years, and in addition to VR-specific games like Horizon Call of the Mountain and Mossbook, there are also games that can do both. Take The Midnight Walk and GT7, for example. These are games that can be played in virtual reality or normally without a headset. The ability to switch between the two modes based on whether you're wearing a headset or what kind of gaming mood you're in is fantastic. On the other hand, neither a VR headset nor any VR games are available for the Xbox. Additionally, you can use either of the 2 consoles to play remotely. We now have the choice to use your phone, iPad, or a portable console. You can play games remotely on the Xbox by downloading the Xbox or Game Pass app. These days, this is compatible with a wide range of gadgets, such as the ROG Ally X, your smartphone, and the Logitech G Cloud. Additionally, the remote app on the PlayStation functions similarly. You can play games remotely from here if you download this to your tablet or phone. But there's also the option to use the PlayStation Portal. As long as you have an internet connection, you can stream your games using this specific PlayStation accessory. At first, this had a somewhat difficult launch because it could only function when connected to your PS5. However, these days, you can use this to stream PS Plus games without having to connect to your PS5. I've used this everywhere, and it's a great way to play PS5 games when you're not at your setup. Alright, so the price of these 2 is another consideration. If you haven't purchased one yet, the price increases over the past few months may influence your choice. Let's start with the Series S. With fewer specifications and no disk drive, this is the entry-level Xbox system. However, at £299 or $379, it's also the least expensive. If you just want to play games and don't care about the best graphics, this is the ideal console. The Series X comes next. This one has a disk drive, is more powerful, and supports games that support it at full 4K and 120 frames per second. However, with the most recent price increase, it now costs £499 or $599. Well, the PS5 comes next. In actuality, there are 3 versions available here. We've got the PS5 Digital and the PS5 Disc. Both identical specs, other than the disk drive on the side. These 2 therefore cost £390 or $450 and $480 or $500 respectively. And lastly, our newest PS5 model, the PS5 Pro. I've been using this for the past few months. While it plays the same games as the standard PS5, it performs better overall and has better graphics. However, this one costs $699, £699 instead. If you want the best looking and best performing games, this is the console you should purchase. Alright, at this point in the video, you would typically ask, so which is better? They're both the same, so pick the one you like best, in my opinion. However, I no longer think that to be the case. Ultimately, it comes down to 3 things. You can now obtain a lookalike controller for the other console, regardless of your preferred controller. Where your friends are, though you could chat with each other via Discord. And do you want Game Pass? It's not limited to Xboxes. It's available everywhere. In response to the first query, will an Xbox still be necessary in 2025? To be honest, you no longer do. I don't see the need to purchase one today if you don't already have one. Additionally, simply purchase a PS5 if you lack either of these. I would choose the PS5 between these 2. It features a DualSense controller, a VR headset, a PlayStation Portal, and the ability to play the majority of Xbox-only games in one location. At least you would own those Xbox games, even though you would have to purchase them rather than rent them. Naturally, though, this is just my personal viewpoint. How about all of you? If you could only choose one console, which would it be? Do you believe that the PS5 is the superior option overall, or am I entirely mistaken in my analysis of the 2 consoles today? In any case, it is fantastic that more and more games are coming out for both consoles, since that is what we ultimately want to see. And I will not be selling my Xbox as I do use Game Pass. I'll give you a thumbs up for sticking through to the very end if you leave a PS5 versus Xbox comparison in the comment section. Check out my latest video, TV versus monitor for gaming, if you like today's. Thank you for watching then. Kindly like and subscribe. Till the next time.